The tension in the room was palpable. Billionaire Jackson Hale sat at the head of the conference table, his fingers tapping impatiently on the glossy wood surface. Maya Williams stood at the far side of the room, her posture still, but her heart racing. The air was thick with the weight of her words, and yet no one had said anything for what seemed like an eternity. Jackson's eyes never left the page of the contract in front of him, though his mind was far from the legal jargon. His thoughts churned as the silence dragged on. Finally, he broke the stillness, his voice cold and steady. "Explain yourself," he demanded. Maya didn't flinch, didn't even look away from the table. "You're about to sign your company into financial ruin. If you sign this, everything goes south," she said, her voice clear and unwavering. "And you won't even know it until it's too late." The room held its breath. Jackson's expression flickered for a moment, confusion mixed with skepticism, but he didn't challenge her. Instead, his gaze shifted to the contract once more, his mind running through the details she had just laid bare. Maya's calm confidence contrasted sharply with the tension in the room. She knew she was right. This was no ordinary mistake. This was a trap buried in fine print. But she wasn't done yet. "The clause shifts the liability for the merger entirely to your company," Maya continued, her eyes now fixed on the document, unblinking. "If the merger fails or if there are any legal repercussions down the line, it will be your company that pays, not theirs. You'll bear the financial weight, the lawsuits, the blame. You'll lose everything." Jackson narrowed his eyes, his fingers now gripping the pen so tightly that the knuckles whitened. He had been ready to sign it without a second thought. Everything was in order, or so he thought. His confidence, built over years of successful deals, now wavered for the first time in ages. He had been so sure of his authority, his ability to control any situation. But now, in front of a young janitor, he was second-guessing himself. "You're telling me this is a trap?" His voice dropped, but there was no mistaking the doubt creeping in. Maya nodded. "It's a simple clause, but it's designed to confuse. If you don't understand it fully, if you don't read every word, you'll be the one paying the price." For the briefest moment, Jackson's hand hovered over the contract. The room felt like it was closing in on him. His mind raced, running through everything he knew, everything he had worked for. Could she be right? Could she, a janitor's daughter, really know more about contracts than he did? This isn't possible," he muttered under his breath. "You're just a janitor." Maya's eyes flashed. "Just a janitor?" she repeated, her voice colder than before. "I might be a janitor, but I can still read a contract better than you can. Don't let your pride blind you. You're about to make a decision that will cost you more than money. It'll cost you everything." Jackson stood up abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Get her out of here," he ordered, his voice sharp. Security moved quickly, but Maya didn't back down. She didn't even flinch. As the guards moved toward her, she turned on her heel and left the room, but not without one last glance at Jackson. He wasn't sure what he saw in her gaze, but it was enough to make him pause. For the first time, he wasn't sure if he was making the right choice. The next morning, the office was eerily quiet. Jackson walked down the halls of his company, but his usual swagger was gone. The events of the day before, Maya's words, her calm authority, haunted him. His thoughts kept circling back to that moment when he had almost signed away everything he had worked for. He had thought he was in control, but now the doubts lingered. Was she really right? Could he have lost everything with just one signature? He had to know. And so, he called a meeting with his legal team. It was time to go over the contract again carefully, line by line. This time, he wasn't going to miss anything. Jackson sat back in his chair, his gaze fixed on the contract before him. The air in the conference room felt heavy, thick with the tension of the previous day's events. He had spent hours going over the contract, line by line, after Maya's words echoed in his mind. At first, he had been dismissive, convinced that a janitor's daughter couldn't possibly understand the complex legal terms that governed his empire. But as he reread the document, something clicked. Maya was right. The clause buried deep within the contract, the one that seemed so innocuous at first glance, was a trap that would have cost him millions, maybe more. The weight of his mistake settled heavily on his chest. He should have read it more carefully. He should have trusted his instincts. But his pride had clouded his judgment. Now, it was too late to undo the damage. He stared at the document, the room around him fading into the background as his mind raced. How could he have missed this? How could he have been so blind? He could feel his pulse quicken as the realization of what he almost did set in. He almost signed away everything. His empire, his reputation, gone in an instant. The sound of the door opening snapped him out of his thoughts. His legal team entered, and with them, a sense of urgency. "Mr. Hale," one of the attorneys said, breaking the silence. "We've gone over the contract again. There's no mistake. You were right to question it." This clause would have placed the entire liability on Hale Investments. If the merger failed, your company would have been responsible for all financial and legal fallout. Jackson nodded, his expression unreadable. He had known it. Deep down, he had known. But hearing it confirmed by his team, it felt like a weight lifting off his shoulders, though the shame still lingered. "What's the next step?" he asked, his voice quiet but firm. "We need to notify Vaughn Global," the attorney replied. "We need to renegotiate the terms before anything is finalized." Jackson leaned back in his chair, the weight of the situation sinking in. He had been on the brink of making the biggest mistake of his career, but Maya Williams, of all people, had saved him. His mind flashed back to the conference room the day before, to her calm, steady voice as she explained the trap in the contract. He could still see her standing there, unmoving, while the rest of them panicked and doubted her. The janitor's daughter had stood in the face of their power, and she had been right. He couldn't deny it any longer. "We'll reach out to them," Jackson said, his tone now resolute. "But before we do anything, I need to see her again. I need to thank her." The attorney raised an eyebrow but said nothing. "Arrange a meeting," Jackson said, his voice a little sharper now. "Tell her we're not done yet. I need to speak with her." The attorney nodded and left the room, leaving Jackson alone with his thoughts. He sat there for a long time, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the surface of the desk. His mind replayed the moment when Maya had spoken up, when she had challenged him in front of everyone. She had not hesitated. She had not been intimidated. And now, she had saved him from making a grave mistake. He owed her more than just gratitude. He owed her a chance to prove herself. A chance to show that she was more than just a janitor's daughter. He couldn't shake the feeling that something more was at play here. Maya Williams had proven herself in that moment. And for the first time in a long time, Jackson Hale realized he wasn't the smartest person in the room. Maya had taught him something he hadn't known he needed to learn. Sometimes, the people you least expect are the ones who can change everything. The meeting was set. Jackson would speak with Maya, but this time, it would be on his terms, and he would make sure she knew how much her actions had meant. He would show her the respect she deserved. Maya had earned it, and Jackson wasn't going to let that go unnoticed. The next day, Maya arrived at the office. She had no idea what to expect. She had done her job, and that was all. But now, standing before Jackson Hale, she couldn't help but feel a little nervous. "Miss Williams?" Jackson greeted her, his voice surprisingly warm. "I need to apologize. What you did yesterday, you saved me." Maya didn't know what to say. The billionaire was apologizing to her, the man who had humiliated her in front of his entire staff, but there was sincerity in his eyes. "You were right," Jackson continued. "I was blind to the details. You caught something I missed, and for that, I owe you my thanks." Maya's heart raced, but she held her composure. This wasn't just about the apology, it was about the recognition, and it felt good. For the first time in her life, someone saw her for what she truly was, more than just a janitor. "I did what I had to do," she said, her voice steady. "I just wanted to make sure no one else got hurt." Jackson nodded, his expression serious. "You didn't just help me, Maya. You saved my company. And for that, I'll never forget it." He paused for a moment, as if weighing his next words. "I want to offer you a position here, one that recognizes your talents. You don't have to stay in the shadows anymore." Maya blinked, stunned. This was beyond anything she had ever imagined. But there it was, an opportunity, a chance to step into a new world, a world where her talents weren't overlooked, where her voice could make a difference. And for the first time, she felt like she truly belonged. The next morning, Jackson stood in his office, looking out over the city through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a warm, golden glow over the skyline. His mind, however, was far from peaceful. He couldn't stop thinking about Maya, the way she had stood up to him in the conference room, the quiet strength in her voice. He had underestimated her. He had thought of her as just another employee, a janitor, someone to be ignored. But in that moment, she had shown him something he hadn't seen in years: humility, honesty, and most importantly, the power of seeing things clearly. He was still processing the events of the day before, how close he had come to making the worst decision of his career, how Maya, a young woman with no corporate training, had caught something his entire legal team had missed. Her ability to see through the fine print, to understand the weight of the situation, had saved him from disaster. It was a humbling thought. It made him question everything he had ever believed about power, success, and what it meant to be in control. He had built his empire on his ability to read people, to control situations. But Maya had done what he could not. She had seen the truth, and she had acted on it without hesitation. As Jackson turned away from the window, his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Hale," she said, stepping into the room. "Miss Williams is here to see you." Jackson's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't sure what to expect from Maya. She had saved him, but now he was about to offer her something he hadn't given to anyone in years: respect. "Send her in," he replied, his voice steady, but there was a hint of something deeper, something he couldn't quite name. Maya entered the room, her posture straight, her face calm, but there was a glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes. Jackson rose to greet her, offering a smile, though it felt unfamiliar on his face. "Miss Williams," he began, his voice warm, "I want to thank you again for what you did yesterday. You saved me. You saved my company. I owe you more than just gratitude." Maya stood silently, waiting for him to continue. Jackson paused, searching for the right words. "You were right. I was wrong to dismiss you. I was blind to the details, but you saw them, and because of that, everything has changed." Maya didn't speak immediately. She simply nodded, as if she already knew what he was going to say. "I want to offer you a position here, with full recognition of your abilities," Jackson continued. "You have proven to me that you are more than just a janitor. You're someone who sees the world in a way I've never understood, and I believe you can bring that insight to my company. I'm offering you the chance to step into a new role, a role that honors your skills and your intelligence." Maya's eyes widened slightly, but she didn't let her surprise show. She had never expected this. She had never imagined that her actions, speaking out in the face of a powerful man, challenging him, would lead to something like this. She had done it because it was the right thing to do, not for any recognition or reward. I don't know what to say," Maya said softly, her voice filled with both humility and disbelief. Jackson smiled. "You don't have to say anything. I know this is a big decision. Take your time. But I want you to know, the offer is there." Maya stood in silence for a moment, processing the weight of his words. This wasn't just an offer of a job, it was an offer of a new life. A life where she would no longer have to hide in the shadows, where her voice would be heard, where her talents would be recognized. For the first time, Maya realized that she didn't have to be invisible. She didn't have to live in the margins. She could take up space. She could be seen. "I'll accept," she said, her voice steady. Jackson nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Good," he said. "You've earned it." As Maya left the room, her heart was lighter than it had been in years. She had gone from being a janitor, overlooked and dismissed, to someone who would now have the power to make a difference. She wasn't just changing her own future. She was changing the future of a company, of people who had never seen her for who she truly was. And in that moment, Maya Williams knew that she had found her place in the world. She had proven to herself, and to everyone else, that sometimes the most powerful people aren't the ones who sit at the top, they're the ones who stand up and speak the truth when no one else will. It was a few weeks later when Jackson received a call that would change everything. The phone rang early in the morning as he sat in his office, sipping his coffee, preparing for yet another grueling day of meetings. When he saw the number on the screen, he froze. It was the legal department. "Mr. Hale, we need to talk. We've just received some troubling news," the voice on the other end said, urgency dripping in every word. Jackson's stomach sank as he set his cup down, his mind racing. "What is it?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "There's been an issue with the merger. A major oversight in the fine print that could undo everything we've worked for. It's serious." Jackson's heart pounded in his chest as he thought back to the contract Maya had saved him from. Had it all been for nothing? He leaned forward, bracing himself for the worst. "What happened?" he demanded. "We're facing a lawsuit, Mr. Hale. One of the clauses from the contract has come under fire, and the opposing party is threatening to expose everything. If we don't act fast, we could be in serious legal and financial trouble." Jackson's mind raced as he felt the weight of the situation pressing down on him. This wasn't just about business anymore, it was about everything he had worked for, everything he had built. His empire was at risk. He stood up and walked over to the window, his hand gripping the edge of the desk. "I need you to find out exactly what's happening. Get me a full report, and get Maya in here, now," he ordered. Maya had been with the company for weeks now, and she had proven herself time and time again. She had saved the company once, and Jackson knew that if anyone could find a way out of this mess, it was her. Moments later, Maya stood in front of his desk, looking every bit the confident, capable woman she had become. Her presence was commanding, a stark contrast to the timid janitor she had been when she first walked through those doors. "What's going on, Mr. Hale?" she asked, her voice calm but laced with concern. Jackson didn't hesitate. He told her everything. He didn't sugarcoat the severity of the situation, didn't hold back any details. If anyone was going to fix this, it was Maya. As he spoke, Maya listened intently, her brow furrowing as she processed the information. She asked a few questions, clarifying some points, but for the most part, she absorbed the details like a sponge. When Jackson finished, he looked at her, waiting for her response. She paused for a moment, her mind working through the possibilities. "We can fix this," she said, her voice unwavering. "I know what we need to do, but we need to move quickly. I'll need access to the legal files, all of the correspondence, and any other documents related to the merger. This will take time, but I can handle it." Jackson nodded, a wave of relief washing over him. He had trusted her once, and he would trust her again. "I'll get everything you need," he said, his voice filled with confidence. "I believe in you, Maya." As she left the room, Jackson felt a surge of gratitude. Maya had done more for him than he could ever have imagined. She had saved his career, and now, it seemed she was about to save his company once again. Hours later, Maya returned to Jackson's office, the tension in the air palpable. She had spent the entire afternoon poring over the legal files, cross-referencing every detail, every clause, and every piece of communication. She had found the issue. The clause in question was indeed the one she had flagged earlier, but it had been buried so deep that no one had noticed. "I've got it," she said, her voice sharp and clear. "We can amend the clause. We'll need to rewrite it and present it to the other party as a revision, but if we move fast, we can avoid the lawsuit." Jackson felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Maya had done it again. She had found a way to save them. "You've just saved us again," he said, his voice filled with awe. Maya nodded, but there was no pride in her expression. "It's just business, Mr. Hale. We all have our part to play." Jackson stood up and walked over to her. For the first time, he felt like he truly understood her. She wasn't just a janitor. She wasn't just someone who had stumbled into this world. She was a force to be reckoned with, and he had underestimated her from the very beginning. "No, Maya," he said, his voice softening. "You're more than that. You're the reason we're still standing. I owe you more than just a job. I owe you my respect, and I want you to know that." Maya looked up at him, her face unreadable. For a brief moment, there was a flicker of something in her eyes, something like gratitude, but also something deeper, something she wasn't ready to share. "I don't need anything from you, Mr. Hale," she said, her voice steady. "I just want to do my job, and I'll keep doing it no matter where I am." Jackson smiled. "Then let's make sure you have the chance to keep doing it in whatever capacity you deserve." Maya left the room, and Jackson stood there, staring after her. He knew that his company was safe for now, but more importantly, he knew that Maya had changed everything for him, for the company, and for herself. The following days passed in a whirlwind of meetings, revisions, and updates. Maya worked tirelessly, her reputation continuing to grow as the woman who could see the truth when no one else could. But as the tension in the office began to ease, she felt a shift, something that she had been quietly dreading. Her colleagues, while no longer as openly skeptical as before, still looked at her with an underlying curiosity, almost as if they were waiting for her to fail. It wasn't overt, but it was there, in the way they spoke, in the way they never quite made eye contact for too long. She had risen above her station in ways that none of them expected, and she could feel the weight of their expectations bearing down on her. She knew the truth, they still didn't fully accept her. And no matter how many projects she handled, how many deals she fixed, she would always be seen as the janitor who somehow found her way into a room full of suits. Maya, however, was no stranger to fighting. Her life had been full of obstacles, of people telling her where she belonged and where she didn't. She had lived with those limits for years, but now she knew she didn't have to settle for them. She had already proven her worth, time and again. She had earned her seat at the table, and no one could take that from her. But the constant scrutiny, the subtle reminders of where she came from, started to wear on her. She couldn't avoid the feelings of isolation any longer. The work was rewarding, yes, but she was beginning to wonder if this world she had stepped into would ever truly be hers. One afternoon, as she sat at her desk, reading through another set of contracts, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Jackson. "Meet me in my office. We need to talk." Maya's heart skipped. She had grown accustomed to these summons, but today there was an edge to his message that made her stomach turn. What had happened? What had gone wrong? She stood up and made her way to Jackson's office. The door was already ajar, and she stepped inside without knocking. Jackson was sitting at his desk, staring out the window. The moment she entered, he turned his chair to face her. "Maya," he said, his voice softer than usual. "Please, sit down." Maya's unease deepened. "What's going on?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Jackson paused for a moment before speaking, his expression unreadable. "I've been thinking about everything," he said. "About the offer I made you, about how much you've done for this company, and I realized something important." Maya sat down across from him, waiting for him to continue. Jackson took a deep breath, clearly struggling with what he was about to say. "You've saved this company, Maya," he said. "You've done more than anyone expected. But I need to ask you something now. Do you still want to be here?" Maya blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean," Jackson continued, "this place isn't easy to navigate. The people here, they're not as accepting as they should be, and I know you feel that. I've seen it in the way people treat you, even if it's subtle. They still don't truly see you for who you are, what you're capable of. And I won't stand for that." Maya opened her mouth to respond, but Jackson held up his hand, signaling her to wait. "I'm offering you a chance to leave," he said quietly. "You've done more than enough. You've proven your worth. But if you want out, if you want a fresh start, I will support you." Maya's mind spun. She had never expected this. She had worked so hard, put everything she had into proving herself. And now Jackson was offering her a way out, a chance to leave it all behind. The offer was tempting, but something in her chest tightened at the thought of walking away from everything she had fought for. "I don't want to leave," she said finally, her voice strong. "I've worked too hard to just walk away. I'm not done here. This is where I belong." Jackson studied her for a moment, his gaze softening. "Then we're on the same page," he said. "You've earned your place, Maya. You've shown me, and everyone else, that you're not just a janitor. You're someone who can change the game. But don't ever let anyone make you feel less than that." Maya felt the weight of his words settle in her chest. For the first time, she felt a sense of belonging that she hadn't realized she was craving. This was her moment, her chance to prove not only to the world but also to herself that she belonged here, that she had earned every single step she had taken. "Thank you, Jackson," she said, her voice steady. "I'm not going anywhere." Jackson smiled, the weight lifting from his shoulders. "Good," he said. "Let's keep going then. Together." As Maya left his office, she felt a wave of determination wash over her. This wasn't just about the job. It was about her future, her place in the world. And she wasn't about to let anyone, not even the people who still saw her as the janitor, take that away from her. Maya walked slowly down the wide corridor of Hale Enterprises, her footsteps echoing softly against the polished marble floors. Sunlight poured in through the tall windows, casting long, golden reflections on the walls, highlighting the dust particles that floated lazily in the air. She adjusted the sleeves of her crisp white blouse, the fabric smooth beneath her fingers, and took a deep breath, feeling the steady rhythm of her heartbeat, a quiet reminder of the journey she had undertaken. Every office door she passed was a silent witness to her transformation from the janitor who had been dismissed and underestimated to the woman now entrusted with responsibilities that could change the fate of the company. She paused for a moment, resting her hand against the cool surface of the glass wall. The light caught the edges of the pane, bending and refracting, creating small, fractured rainbows that reminded her of the way the world had seemed fractured when she first arrived. It had been months since that fateful day in the boardroom when she had spoken up, when her voice had cut through the authority and arrogance of Jackson Hale, the billionaire who had once dismissed her as insignificant. She remembered his cold stare, the tension in the room, the disbelief etched into the faces of the executives who could not fathom that a janitor could possess the clarity to see what they had missed. And yet she had been right. She had saved the company from a catastrophic mistake and had, unknowingly at first, forced those who held power to confront their own pride and arrogance. Now, as she moved through the office, she could see subtle changes. People she had once barely noticed now stepped aside respectfully, nodding in recognition, their expressions betraying a mix of respect and curiosity. The subtle hum of conversations paused momentarily when she passed, acknowledging her presence not out of obligation, but out of recognition of her competence and integrity. She reached the top floor, where the offices of the senior executives were located. From here, the city stretched out below, the streets glistening in the afternoon sunlight, the river reflecting the light in long, shimmering trails. Maya paused to take it all in, feeling a sense of serenity settle over her, a quiet triumph that had nothing to do with accolades or titles. It was about standing firm in her truth, about knowing the weight of her actions and the value of her judgment. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped into the hallway that led to Jackson's office. She could hear the faint murmur of voices, the shuffle of papers, the distant hum of the air conditioning, and for a moment, she closed her eyes and let herself feel the stillness. When she opened them, she saw Jackson standing by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, looking out over the city. He turned as she entered, his expression unreadable for a heartbeat, and then a small, genuine smile broke across his face. Maya returned the smile, a quiet acknowledgement passing between them, a recognition of battles fought and lessons learned. She took her place at her desk, the papers before her no longer symbols of fear or doubt, but tools she wielded with confidence and purpose. The office was alive, but in that liveliness, there was also a profound silence, a silence that spoke of hard-won respect, of authority tempered by humility, and of justice quietly served. Maya knew she had changed more than just her own life. She had altered the perception of everyone around her. No longer invisible, she had forced those who underestimated her to confront their assumptions, to see her for her intelligence, her integrity, and her unwavering courage. And as she looked out the window, the city sprawling endlessly below, she allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. Every challenge, every whispered doubt, every dismissive glance had led to this point. She had not only survived, but had transformed the space around her, bending it toward fairness and recognition. And in that stillness, in the warmth of the sun and the coolness of the glass, she felt a calm certainty. This was her world now, not because she had taken it, but because she had earned it. Maya turned back to her work, her hands steady, her mind clear, and she began to write, to plan, to act, with the knowledge that her place was no longer questioned. She had stood up, she had spoken, and she had been heard. The office around her thrummed quietly with life, but for Maya, there was a profound peace, a recognition that integrity, courage, and truth had finally been acknowledged, and that in her silence and her action, she had reshaped the narrative forever. Discover the powerful and transformative journey of Maya Williams in this compelling Black story. From humble beginnings as a janitor to becoming a pivotal force in a powerful company, Maya's story challenges perceptions and defies expectations. In the world of Black stories, Maya proves that true strength lies not in status or title, but in the ability to stand up, speak out, and make a difference when it matters most. This Black story highlights how Maya's intelligence and integrity save a company from a potentially catastrophic mistake, proving that everyone, no matter their background, has the power to impact the world around them. As Maya moves through the corridors of power, she earns the respect she deserves, not through fear or manipulation, but through her quiet determination and unwavering belief in herself. The journey in this Black story teaches valuable lessons about overcoming obstacles, finding one's voice, and earning respect in a world that often overlooks those who don't fit the traditional mold. Maya's journey is a reminder that the world of Black stories is filled with individuals who rise above adversity, rewriting their own narratives and shaping the future with their courage. This Black story continues to inspire those who feel marginalized, showing that with hard work, intelligence, and resilience, anyone can change the course of their life and those around them.